This is Booked for Drama, where stories burn, hearts break, the tea is always hot and never a part two. Today we're diving into Returning to Say No. Let's go. On the way home for the holidays, my husband, Joshua, and I were in an accident. When I opened my eyes again, I was no longer lying broken in a hospital bed. I was back in college before we had even started dating. In my last life, Joshua and I were married for 7 years. Our house was always neat, our conversations polite, but warmth never touched its walls. He wouldn't even give me a child. It was only later that I learned the truth. His heart had always belonged to someone else, his first love, his old flame. After being reborn, I made my decision. I would set him free. We deleted each other from our contacts, kept our distance and lived separate lives. 7 years later, Joshua was one of Wall Street's brightest rising stars. At our college reunion, he stood tall beside his girlfriend, Isabella, as they officially announced their engagement. Seeing me still single, he couldn't resist twisting the knife. "Sienna," he drawled, a smirk tugging at his lips. "I know I was the best man you ever had, in both lifetimes, but you don't have to stay single forever waiting for me." I ignored him. Instead, I reached for my son's hand. The color drained from Joshua's face. His eyes went bloodshot, locking onto me with fury. "You said you'd love me for a lifetime," he hissed. "That you'd only ever have children with me." We crossed paths again at the Northwood High reunion. 7 years after fate had given us both a second chance. I arrived straight from the hospital, still in my scrubs after hours of back-to-back surgeries. Exhaustion weighed me down, but I didn't bother changing before heading to the ballroom. Joshua was at the center of it all, Isabella at his side, his arm firmly around her waist, as if she were a prize. "Joshua, you're incredible," someone gushed. "Just a few years on Wall Street, and you're already one of the top traders. You're the pride of Northwood High." No kidding, I heard the big shots in New York pay just to have dinner with him. His consultation fees alone are 6 figures. That's more than most of us make in a year. "Hey Joshua, I've been dabbling in stocks. How about giving an old classmate some inside info? Help a brother out." Amid the laughter, a curious voice cut in. "So, Joshua, are you and Isabella getting engaged soon?" Joshua's gaze softened as he looked down at her. "We are December 20th. Applause and cheers erupted. Then someone asked, "Joshua, do you ever talk to Sienna anymore? You two were so intense back in the day. I heard you even wrote your first song for her." At my name, his smile stiffened. For just a second, his eyes darkened. Isabella, graceful as ever, laughed lightly and leaned into him. "Oh, you, Joshua and I are getting married. You know how it is. High school hobbies don't last and neither do high school romances." He moved on from Sienna ages ago. The crowd chuckled, shifting back to praising the perfect couple. But I knew the truth. He had written that song for me the night he confessed his love. We were the classic campus romance, love at first sight. I still remembered his voice, the way he held my gaze. "Sienna," he'd said, "look into my eyes. I love you. The eyes don't lie." And I had believed him. But in our last life, his eyes had lied. As I stepped into the ballroom, someone spotted me immediately. "Sienna, you finally made it. What are you wearing? You couldn't change into something more formal. Don't tell me you just got off work. Where are you slaving away these days? There are successful people here. Maybe they could hook you up with an easier job." A few people snickered. I gave them a polite, distant smile, unbothered. From the moment I walked in, Joshua's gaze never left me. "Long time no see," I said evenly. His expression faltered, then shifted into a mocking grin. "Sienna, after all these years, you haven't changed a bit." Still no ambition. Beside him, Isabella's gaze sharpened like a knife. She clung tighter to his arm and leaned in as though marking her territory. "Joshua, don't say that," she cooed sweetly, though her eyes flashed with venom. "She might be having a rough time, but we shouldn't rub it in. Life's already hard enough for Sienna." Her gaze flicked over me, head to toe, her lips curling in a sneer. "But really, Sienna, what is that outfit? You're not getting any younger. A woman has to take care of herself. Or how will you ever get married? What man wants a woman who looks like she's already given up?" She smirked. "Do you want me to lend you some makeup?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. The contrast was glaring. Isabella was dressed head to toe in designer brands, her makeup flawless, her aura radiating money and refinement. I, on the other hand, had just stepped out of a 24-hour shift. My no-name sweats clung to my tired frame, and I felt every ounce of my exhaustion. Still, I only said, "No, thank you, I'm fine." I took a seat and reached for the buffet, far more interested in food than their scorn. After a shift like mine, I was starving. I had just taken a bite when Joshua walked over. Without a word, he placed a check for $100,000 in front of me. "This is for old time's sake," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "Do something nice for yourself. Find a respectable job, buy some decent clothes, learn to love yourself again." He sighed dramatically. "Sienna, the past is the past. You need to stop dwelling on it. If it weren't for you, well, it doesn't matter now. What matters is that you don't let my leaving ruin you. Don't just give up on life, okay?" I looked up at him, truly puzzled. His unfinished words lingered in my mind. If it weren't for me, what? What story had he told himself in our last life to justify abandoning me? Back then, we had gone from high school sweethearts to husband and wife. He had his musical dreams and I wanted to be a doctor. Both paths require time, money, sacrifice. One of us had to give. Because I loved him, I gave up my place in a prestigious medical research program. I worked right out of college supporting both of our dreams on my single income, but he failed. Again and again, each rejection left him bitter, brooding. And each time, after a long day of work, I came home to soothe his bruised pride, trying to hold him together. I thought he understood my devotion. Until the day he wanted a new guitar. When I told him we couldn't afford it, he smashed his old one against the wall in a rage. Do you know what she said? He screamed, his face twisted. Isabella told me to go with her to the States. If I'd listened, I wouldn't be living this miserable life. His eyes burned with hatred. I regret ever getting together with you. After that day, he stopped playing. His dream withered and his words, I regret ever getting together with you, became the mantra that haunted my nights. I made one last desperate attempt. I clung to him, whispered against his shoulder. Joshua, I want to have a baby with you. He shoved me away, eyes blazing with disgust. Are you insane? Look at our finances. How can we afford a child? Besides, I've told you before, I hate kids. I don't want to have a child with you. Those two sentences shattered the last fragile thread of hope in my heart. That year, on the way home for the holidays, a truck barreled across the median. In that final instant before impact, I felt no fear, only relief. Reborn, I had no reason to dig up the past. We had both chosen distance. I pushed the check back across the table. My voice was steady. No, thank you. I don't accept things from strangers. His brows knit together. A stranger, Sienna? What's that supposed to mean? I can buy my own clothes. I replied calmly. And whatever my job is, I find it respectable. I'm not ashamed of it, and I certainly haven't given up on life. You should give this money to someone who actually needs it. Joshua's lips thinned as he clutched the check in his fist, silent fury written across his face. Isabella drifted gracefully to his side. Her eyes flickered with rage when she saw the crumpled check, but she quickly masked it with a sweet smile. Sienna, if you don't want her help, that's fine. We'll offer something more concrete. Her voice dripped with mock kindness. I recently opened a high-end nail salon on Bellevue Avenue. You can start as an apprentice. The pay isn't great, maybe $6,000 a month, but you'll learn a real skill. That way, if you ever hit rock bottom, you could open your own little shop. Her smile sharpened. What do you say? Interested? It has to be more respectable than what you're doing now. I kept eating unbothered. Thank you for the kind offer, but I'm very happy with my current job. I have no plans to change careers. A voice from a nearby table scoffed. Sienna, don't be so proud. Joshua and Isabella are offering you money and a job. Just take it. Yeah, seriously, you're already in this state. What's the point of saving face? The only reason to come to a reunion when you're doing badly is to network. Stop pretending. Isabella raised her hands in false protest, her tone sugar-sweet. Everyone, please don't say that. Maybe Sienna really does love her job. She turned back to me with feigned sympathy. We're only offering because of our shared history. Don't let pride blind you to a good opportunity. I blinked at her, truly baffled by their insistence. Really, I don't need it. Thank you. Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes burned with contempt. Joshua sneered, crushing the check in his fist. You can't help someone who won't help themselves. Fine. Stay poor for the rest of your life, for all I care. His words seemed to be the cue. A group of his drinking buddies descended on my table, bottles in hand. Sienna, you look like you could use a drink. One of them slurred, leering openly. Come on, one glass, and I'll transfer you $1,000. If you're really desperate, I can add a little more. Their laughter was coarse, ugly, and not one person stepped in. I frowned, fighting the urge to leave. This reunion was nothing like I'd imagined. If I wasn't waiting for someone, I would have already walked out. Just as I reached for my phone to call security, Joshua stubbed out his cigarette and strode forward. His hand clamped onto the man's wrist like a vice. Back off, he said coldly. The man yelped in pain, struggling. Joshua, what are you doing? Isabella rushed to his side, tugging on his sleeve. Joshua's face was ice. It's called being a decent human being. This is a reunion, not a frat party. He shoved the man aside, who slunk away, nursing his wrist and throwing me one last venomous glare. I glanced at Joshua, startled by his sudden defense. Isabella's expression soured, though she forced her lips into a smile. I heard the young heir and the CEO of Apex Holdings are having a meeting upstairs. If we're lucky, we might get to see the richest man in the city. The announcement electrified the room. The CEO of Apex Holdings was a legend, handsome, powerful, and still in his 30s. Rumor had it he had a 5-year-old son, though his wife had never once appeared in public. Does that mean we might see his wife tonight? This is going on TikTok immediately. This is huge. Moments later, a group of bodyguards swept into the ballroom, escorting a small boy. The crowd erupted. Look at that entourage. That has to be the Apex heir. He's adorable. The same man who had harassed me, now rubbing his sore wrist, sneered. Sienna, if it weren't for Isabella, a wage slave like you wouldn't even breathe the same air as the city's prince. If I were you, I'd get on my knees and thank her right now. Maybe you'd not only get a job but land a guy like me $6,000 a month. Pathetic. I ignored him. My eyes were fixed on the boy. The crowd surged forward, phones raised. Even Isabella softened her features into a flattering smile as she crouched slightly, extending her hand. Hello there, little one. Is there anything you'd like to eat? Auntie can get it for you. She reached out, fingers poised to pinch his cheek. But to everyone's shock, the boy brushed right past her. His eyes found me instantly. Then his face lit up, breaking into the sweetest grin. He sprinted straight into my arms. Mommy, you're finally here. The small weight of my son in my arms felt heavier than any burden I had ever carried, yet lighter than the regrets I had left behind. He clung to me with effortless trust, his tiny fingers wrapped around mine, and I realized in that moment that everything else, the reunion, Joshua, Isabella, the whispers of old classmates, was irrelevant. Mommy, you smell like the hospital, he said softly, tilting his head with that innocent curiosity only children have. Did you help people today? Yes, sweetie, I replied, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. I helped a lot of people today. And now I'm here with you. He beamed, a grin so pure it could dissolve years of bitterness. You're the best, Mommy. Really, even as Joshua's sharp gaze bore into me from across the room, I felt no fear. I was no longer the young woman who had clung desperately to a man who didn't see her. This time, I had a purpose. This time, I had my son. A faint memory flitted through my mind. Our first year of marriage. A fight over something as trivial as a dinner reservation. How I had begged him to care. To notice my efforts. How I had stayed silent when my own dreams had been shelved. In the name of love. That Sienna would have crumbled under the weight of Joshua's words. Would have trembled at Isabella's envy. Would have taken the check and the condescension just to keep the peace. But not this Sienna. I bent down, whispering into my son's ear. Do you want to go see the cake? He squealed in delight, tugging at my hand. Together, we walked past the whispers, past Joshua's smoldering stare, past Isabella's carefully painted smile. The room's spotlight might have been on them, but we carried our own light. Mommy, why is that lady staring at you? He asked innocently, pointing at Isabella. She's curious, I said lightly, not giving her the satisfaction of my irritation. Some people just like to watch what others do. He nodded seriously, as if he understood. I like you best, Mommy. You never get mad like Daddy sometimes. A pang twisted my chest, sharp but fleeting. I swallowed the memory of those nights when Joshua's silence had felt like ice, when I had felt unseen in a house full of possessions but no love. I hugged my son tighter. He was my redemption, my anchor, and the proof that my choices, this life, this family, this love, were worth every sacrifice I had made for myself. Joshua approached cautiously, his polished shoes clicking against the ballroom floor. Sienna, his voice carried the rehearsed charm of a man used to controlling rooms, bending the atmosphere to his will. You look well. I smiled gently, keeping my gaze on my son. Thank you, I said. We're doing very well. The words stung, though not me. They were a sting for him, a reminder that I had chosen a life independent of his manipulation, a life rich in meaning that no Wall Street accolade could buy. Joshua's eyes narrowed slightly, but I didn't look away. I didn't flinch. I only lifted my son in my arms and whispered, Are you ready for the cake? His laugh rang clear, pure, echoing louder than the applause for Joshua's engagement announcement. And for the first time in years, I felt truly untouchable. Joshua's jaw tightened as he watched me lift our son, guiding him past the ballroom tables with an ease he couldn't comprehend. He was used to controlling the narrative, bending people to his will. Ensuring admiration followed his every move. But tonight, he felt the strange, unwelcome tug of uncertainty. Did you see Sienna? One former classmate whispered to another, eyes wide with admiration. She's glowing and so poised. After everything, she's happy. Joshua stiffened. The words stung, not because they were untrue, but because they implied something he had never allowed himself to admit. He no longer controlled her life. He straightened his posture, smooth and commanding, approaching with his signature Wall Street charm. Sienna, he said, a hint of practiced warmth in his voice. I see you've managed to, what's the word, thrive. Quite impressive. I looked up at him calmly, eyes steady, lips curved in a polite smile. Thank you, Joshua, we're doing very well. He cleared his throat, deciding to flaunt the life he had built, the power, the wealth. The prestige he assumed would intimidate me. I just returned from a conference in London. He said, letting the words hang in the air. We closed a deal worth over $100 million. Not everyone can handle this kind of pressure, you know. I tilted my head slightly, amused but unfazed. That's wonderful. I'm glad it went well. London must have been exciting. His lips pressed into a thin line. Sheer wealth, accolades, and influence that had worked before. People usually swallowed their awe, their envy, but not me. My focus wasn't on prestige. It was on the little boy clinging to my hip, on the warmth of my own life. Joshua's internal monologue spiraled, sharp and bitter. How is she untouched? She should be impressed, intimidated, grateful. She should still. He stopped, realizing the thought itself revealed the depth of his loss. The Sienna standing before him was no longer a girl who had waited for his love. No longer a wife tethered to his mood swings and broken promises. He watched her laugh softly at a joke her son made, the easy rhythm of her movements, the strength in her composure. The contrast was unbearable. Isabella shifted uneasily at his side, sensing the tension she had never managed to erase, but Joshua couldn't voice it. He was trapped in the uncomfortable awareness that for once, he had nothing she didn't. Joshua straightened again, trying one last tactic, subtle intimidation. You know, he said, leaning slightly closer, I could make things simpler. A few introductions, a bit of guidance, and you could. I raised a hand, stopping him with effortless grace. Joshua, I appreciate the offer, but we're doing just fine. Really? The words were soft, yet firm. His gaze faltered, the storm behind his eyes betraying the cracks in his carefully maintained persona. Why isn't she desperate? Why isn't she begging? Jealousy, tinged with regret, simmered beneath his polished exterior. He had built his empire expecting admiration, expecting loyalty, expecting Sienna to be grateful for whatever crumbs of attention he deigned to drop her way. But she wasn't, and that realization, simple, undeniable, cut sharper than any loss on Wall Street ever could. He watched her return to her son, laughing as he pointed at a tray of desserts. And for the first time, Joshua understood a truth he had long ignored. No power, no money, no status could buy back what he had thrown away. Isabella's eyes never left me. Every smile she offered the crowd was a mask, hiding the storm brewing underneath. The moment I laughed at something my son said, her lips pressed tighter together, her fingers tapping lightly against Joshua's arm as if to mark her territory. "Mommy, look at that cake," my son squealed, tugging me toward the dessert table. I followed, keeping my tone light, my attention entirely on him. Joshua trailed behind, his expression unreadable. He clearly noticed Isabella's restless energy, but he didn't intervene. That small hesitation thrilled me, though I made no outward reaction. Isabella leaned in, her voice barely audible to anyone but him. "Do you really have to be so distracted by her?" she whispered, her tone dripped with irritation disguised as concern. "Everyone's watching Joshua, and Sienna, she's always so calm, so confident. It's unnerving." Joshua's jaw tightened. "She's not my concern," he replied curtly, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. I noticed a small, satisfied smile tugged at the corner of my lips, though I kept it private. Later, Isabella spotted an opportunity. She sauntered over with an overly sweet laugh, her designer heels clicking against the polished floor. "Sienna, I couldn't help but notice your outfit, very casual. After all these years, you really haven't changed." The room's attention seemed to shift. A few whispers rippling across the crowd. A classic attempt to embarrass me publicly. I lifted my son into my arms, keeping my smile serene. "Yes, it's been a long day at the hospital. My son here doesn't mind at all. Does he?" He giggled, snuggling closer to me. A few people chuckled at my reply, and Isabella's smile faltered. I hadn't responded with anger, hadn't hesitated, and certainly hadn't allowed her words to undermine my presence. Joshua's gaze flicked between us, tension coiling tight in his chest. She's not fazed, he realized. She doesn't care, she isn't afraid of her. Not to be outdone, Isabella leaned slightly closer, lowering her voice so only I could hear. "You know, some people just need a little guidance. You could benefit from mine." I chuckled softly. "Thank you, Isabella, but we're managing just fine." I patted my son's back gently, emphasizing my focus was entirely elsewhere. Her eyes narrowed, though the smile remained brittle and sharp. She had underestimated the simple fact that I had nothing to prove, that the power she wielded socially no longer held sway over me. The subtle sabotage had begun. I let a passing waiter spill a little drink onto the table nearest Isabella, an accident, of course, but perfectly timed, drawing polite attention away from her and toward the clumsiness of the situation. She stiffened, managing her composure, but it was clear the crowd noticed. Joshua's lips pressed into a line, torn between irritation and fascination. Isabella's perfect veneer was cracking, just as mine had solidified. By the end of the night, the tension was palpable. Isabella's attempts to manipulate had failed at every turn, leaving her visibly frustrated. Joshua, though silent, had begun to question his perfect world. And I had reminded both of them, quietly but unmistakably, that I was no longer a woman to be controlled, mocked, or underestimated. As we left the ballroom, my son's hand tucked snugly into mine, I glanced back at the duo. Joshua's expression was unreadable, Isabella's rigid and calculating. I smiled softly to myself. The next morning, the sun streamed through the windows of my small apartment, catching the dust motes that danced lazily in the air. My son was at the breakfast table, happily drawing with crayons while humming a tune I didn't recognize. For the first time in years, I felt entirely at peace in the rhythm of our ordinary life. The peace shattered with a single message on my phone, an unexpected email from Evelyn Harrington. A former mentor for my early days in medical research. Her name alone brought a flutter of anticipation. "Dear Sienna, I've been following your work quietly and am impressed. There's a position opening at Harrington Biotech, something uniquely suited to someone of your talent. It's a high-profile project, substantial funding, and full autonomy. If you're interested, I'd like to discuss it over lunch." Evelyn, I paused, rereading the words. Harrington Biotech was a major player in medical innovation and Evelyn had a reputation for cultivating brilliant minds. This was the kind of opportunity that could shape a career, influence an industry, and more importantly, allow me to help people on a scale I had only dreamed of before. I took a deep breath, weighing the offer strategically. Emotion had no role here. This was a professional decision, a step toward a life that had nothing to do with Joshua or his world. "Mommy," my son asked, breaking my reverie, "are you going to be famous?" I smiled, ruffling his hair. "Not famous, sweetie, but maybe I'll get to help a lot more people." Later that afternoon, I walked into a quiet, upscale cafe to meet Evelyn. She rose as I approached, her smile warm but measured. "Sienna, it's wonderful to see you again. And look at you, your son. He's adorable." We sat and over the clink of coffee cups, she explained the project in detail. It was ambitious, cutting-edge, and exactly the kind of challenge that suited my skills and passion. Every word resonated with me, and I realized the stakes were high, but I had never been more certain I was ready. Unbeknownst to me, Joshua had already been alerted through mutual acquaintances of the meeting. When he learned I was considering an opportunity that could elevate my influence independently of him, frustration flashed across his otherwise composed face. "She's building her life without me? How is she thriving without my guidance?" he thought, pacing the floor of his office later that day. "She's untouchable, somehow untouchable." Evelyn concluded, "I understand it's a significant decision. I just wanted you to know that we value what you bring, Sienna. No strings attached. Your vision, your leadership, that's what we need." I nodded, calm and deliberate. "Thank you, Evelyn. I'll give it the thought it deserves. It's exactly what I've been looking for." As I left the cafe, the air seemed lighter, charged with possibility. I felt a spark I hadn't felt in years, the thrill of stepping into my own power, of choosing my life without compromise. Joshua, meanwhile, stared at his reflection in the glass of his office tower, the city sprawling beneath him. He had the wealth, the prestige, the world at his fingertips, but he lacked one thing he could never buy back: control over me. And perhaps he realized that might sting more than any Wall Street loss ever could. The city skyline glittered through the office window, but I barely noticed. My thoughts were focused, deliberate, anchored in the past that had shaped me but would no longer define me. I had arranged a meeting with Joshua, not to beg, not to reconcile, but to close the book on a life that had once held me captive. Joshua appeared, calm and polished as always, though a faint edge of unease betrayed him. "Sienna," he said, attempting warmth that felt forced. "I wasn't expecting you to." "Joshua," I interrupted gently but firmly. "We're not here for pleasantries. I want to speak honestly, without distractions." He straightened, eyes narrowing slightly. "So she's finally going to beg," he thought. "I've spent years thinking about us, about everything that went wrong." I continued, holding his gaze. "I loved you once. I gave up opportunities, sacrifices, and parts of myself for you. And you." I paused, steadying my voice. "You betrayed me, not just in one moment, but repeatedly, with your words, your actions, and your choices." His lips thinned, but I didn't flinch. I had rehearsed these words silently for years, each syllable a balm for old wounds. "You abandoned the life we could have had," I said, letting the truth hang in the air. "You let another woman, Isabella, take the place I deserved. You lied to yourself, to me, and to everyone who ever believed in our love." Joshua's hands curled into fists at his sides. "Sienna, that's not fair." I smiled softly, not with warmth but with resolve. "It's fair, and it's true." A few colleagues who had overheard glanced between us, curiosity flickering in their eyes. I knew the subtle power of witnesses. Truth, once revealed, can be far more disarming than anger. "I'm not here to hurt you," I continued. "I'm here to reclaim the life I lost in my last one. I've made choices I couldn't make before. Choices for myself, for my son, and I won't let the past," I gestured briefly to Joshua, "dictate my happiness ever again." Joshua's expression faltered, the carefully constructed mask of control slipping just enough for regret to shine through. "She's different, stronger, untouchable." I leaned closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear. "I forgave you in my heart the first time, Joshua, but I'm done forgiving your absence. I'm done living a life defined by your mistakes. From now on, I only answer to myself and to my son." He looked away, jaw tight, unable to argue. For the first time, he understood the full weight of what he had lost. Not just me, but the respect, the loyalty, the love that had once been his. I straightened, turning to leave, and allowed one final piece of truth to linger. "You wanted a new life with Isabella. I've built one for myself without you, and it's exactly what I deserve." Joshua remained silent, the sound of my heels echoing in the hall as I walked away. In that moment, I felt a liberation more powerful than any revenge, more enduring than any wealth. I had faced the past, and finally, I had taken back the future. The gala was in full swing, the grand ballroom alive with crystal chandeliers and the hum of conversations. Influential figures in medicine, finance and philanthropy mingled under the glittering lights, unaware that a quiet storm of transformation was about to unfold. I entered with my son at my side, his small hand gripping mine firmly. He was dressed neatly, his eyes wide with excitement at the sparkling venue. For him, I was both mother and hero, and tonight I intended to prove to the world exactly that. Joshua was already there, his posture impeccable, his arm around Isabella, projecting the image of the perfect couple. But the moment he caught sight of us, the mask faltered ever so slightly. I guided my son past the room, greeting acquaintances and exchanging smiles, letting my warmth and confidence radiate effortlessly. Whispers followed us. "That's Sienna Blackwood. She looks incredible." Isabella's lips tightened, a flicker of panic flashing in her eyes. She stepped closer to Joshua, trying to reclaim control, but the effort was transparent. He could sense it. "Why is she so unshakable?" An influential investor approached, bowing slightly. "Dr. Blackwood, it's an honor. I've heard about your recent work. Your research in regenerative medicine is groundbreaking. We should discuss potential collaboration." I smiled politely. "I'd be delighted. Let's set up a meeting." Joshua opened his mouth, intending to intervene, perhaps to assert dominance or redirect attention. But the words caught in his throat. He realized he had no leverage here. Every introduction I made, every conversation I steered, underscored my independence and competence. Isabella's attempts to whisper barbed comments faded under the polite attentions of the crowd. Each glance toward me revealed her frustration. She could no longer overshadow or intimidate me. Later, I found a quiet corner with my son, who had been watching me with awe. "Mommy," he said softly, "you're really amazing. Everyone listens to you." I bent down, brushing a stray curl from his forehead. "Thank you, sweetheart, but do you know the secret?" His eyes widened. "What?" "The real power," I whispered smiling, "comes from doing what's right, not from scaring people or showing off." He grinned, nodding vigorously. "I think I get it. Like when you told Isabella she couldn't boss us around." "Exactly," I replied, hugging him tightly. "We make our own rules. We decide our own lives." Across the room, Joshua's jaw clenched, his pride bruised. He had spent a lifetime believing his influence could bend people to his will, but here it was, my life, fully mine, shining in ways he could not touch. The gala ended, but the victory lingered. My son's hand in mine, the admiration of the influential, the collapse of Joshua and Isabella's control, it was a quiet triumph, one I savored in the warmth of my own independence. For the first time in years, I felt untouchable, not because of wealth or status but because I had chosen myself. And that choice, I knew, would echo far beyond any ballroom or boardroom. The morning sun filtered through the windows of my new office, painting golden streaks across the walls. A small but vibrant space, carefully chosen to reflect not wealth or status, but purpose. On one side, a corner filled with toys and books reminded me of my son's presence, his laughter, his curiosity, the reason I had built this life differently this time. "Mommy, can I help you with this?" he asked, pointing to a stack of plans for our community health initiative. I smiled, kneeling beside him. "Of course, sweetie, you're my partner now, remember?" He beamed, and I felt the weight of years of loss and regret lift. This wasn't a life I had once been forced to endure. It was our life, chosen and shaped with care, with love, with freedom. The project was ambitious. A network of clinics designed to bring affordable healthcare and education to families like ours had once been. Each decision, each step forward, was a statement. We were building, not waiting, giving, not asking, thriving, not surviving. Later that afternoon, a quiet knock echoed through the office. I looked up to see Evan, a longtime family friend and now a rising figure in the medical innovation world. He was warm, intelligent, and had always admired my dedication. Not to my past, but to my purpose. "I wanted to congratulate you," he said softly, offering a small smile. "Your work, it's inspiring. You've built something incredible here." "Thank you," I replied, maintaining calm composure. "But the credit goes to my son and the community. I just helped guide it." He nodded, understanding the unspoken truth. I didn't need validation from anyone, least of all Joshua. Evan's presence was comforting, but I sensed he respected the space I had created for myself. He wasn't here to rescue or control me. He was simply a steady hand, an ally, and perhaps, someday, a companion who could walk beside me without casting a shadow over my independence. I watched my son play in the corner, his laughter like a chorus of hope. My past, the regrets, the betrayals, the toxic love, felt distant, a story I had survived. I had truly returned to say no. No to Joshua's toxicity, no to Isabella's manipulation, no to the life I had once believed I had to accept. I took a deep breath, letting the weight of liberation sink in. The future was mine, unwritten, full of possibility, and I would step into it on my own terms, strong, independent, and unafraid. And for the first time in years, I felt a profound, unshakable peace. We were finally free, and that's a wrap on today's reading here at Booked for Drama. If you felt anything, rage, swoon, secondhand heartbreak, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your fellow drama lovers. If you have any requests, drop them in the comments. Until next time, keep reading, and keep the drama on the page.